first because, or start now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Did you give, okay, that's right. Now I remember. Okay, bear with me for just a second.
Joys of Zoom.
Yeah. From beginning. Zoom. Share screen. There we go. Share. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Alrighty. So my name is Jen, which I've already introduced myself early on, and I am Vice President of the MN CFPA. And our product labeling basics, these are guidelines for everybody to follow. We wrote this presentation with the Law and Mine 28A.152 subdivision 1 to section 3, which I'll show you after a bit here. And I'm sorry, just give me 1 second because I would like to split my screen if I can here. This is bizarre. There we go. At least now I can see some people. I just can't see. There, let's try this. Okay, bear with me. I'm so sorry. First thing I want to do is I want to introduce 2 of our new educators, and I'm going to let them pop on real quick and say hello. Everybody knows that Suzanne Dreesen and Kathy Brandt retired last year, and they have been hunting for new educators. And we just recently found out at the LFAC meeting that we have 2 new educators. One is Amy Johnston. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Amy Johnston. Thanks for the quick opportunity. So I am based out of the Farmington Extension office, and I come from the last 11, 12 years in the institutional, specifically healthcare, senior living, food service, dining, nutrition operations. I have a background in dietetics and public health nutrition. So very excited to be engaging in this part of our food system within Minnesota and applying some different food safety ideas and thoughts, and just really excited to be here to help support the Cottage Food Association. So thank you.
And then Cindy Hale, are you also on right now?
I am here. I'm here.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I'm Cindy Hale. I'm Amy's cohort. Today is day 8 of our position. So, but we're making really good progress in terms of getting plugged in and getting connected. So we're excited to, like Amy said, connect with everybody. I'm based in the Cloquet regional office. And so some of you probably know me. I had a 20-year career with the University of Minnesota Duluth in ecosystems ecology, and really specialized in public education and science education, creating public education that communicated technical information. So that's a really awesome dovetail for this position in food safety. And then I left the university in 2013 to farm full time. My farm's name is Clover Valley Farms. And we did both licensed and lots of cottage food and all kinds of other things. So I'm really, really looking forward to taking these 2 different spheres of my life and putting them together and do some really cool stuff with the food safety program.
Well, we're really excited to have you guys.
Yeah, thank you very much for attending our conference, and it's great to meet you. And I think I've met you before, Cindy, through one of these many.
I think we met at the in-person conference at
January 22nd, 2020, right before everything shut down.
When we became.
No, it was before that. No, it was just recently. It was just like
okay.
couple months ago. You had an in-person workshop in Big Stone or something.
And Big Lake?
Yeah.
Okay,
And
yes,
I showed up.
yes, yes,
I wasn't with the university then. I just showed up because I wanted to
that's
show up.
right, that's right. We had a chat.
That was in October, right, Shelley?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
had
yeah.
a chat.
I knew we had met you.
Great.
Yep.
And welcome, Amy. We hope to teach you all about cottage foods.
Fantastic. So I am going to lean heavily on you guys if I misspeak at all, because sometimes my brain goes really fast. Last year, we did this as well because of the new law and the new requirements and different things of labeling, how it had changed. So last year we had FDA on with us and Marine and a lot of people. So, and Kathy and Suzanne. So if I misspeak or if I have questions, is it okay to call on you? Or if somebody has a question that I can't answer? Is that good? Awesome. So here we go. Okay, maybe not. Now I have to get into here. I love technology. Okay, so cottage food labeling requirements. This is what we have. So each container of the product that you sold or offered under this clause, the cottage food law, it needs to be labeled, and you need to provide your name or your business name. It doesn't need to be both, just one or the other. And then your registration number or your address of where you are making the product. Because I know some cottage food producers do produce in commercial kitchens, not many, but some. And this is on automatic. I don't like that. Anyways, so sole proprietor doing business as, your registration number or your address of where it's made, and the date the food was made. So what that means is you may be making cookies ahead of time, and we can talk about this a little bit more, and freezing them or freezing your dough. The date the food was made is the date that it was actually prepared for sale. So you might want to have some double record keeping there, but we'll talk about that later. And then you also need to have the following statement on here. These products are homemade and not subject to state inspection. And then and all of this is very important. Don't get me wrong, say we need to be able to find you and all that type of stuff, but you need to make sure you have a list of all the ingredients that are contained in the product, including allergens. And your allergens are milk, eggs, fish, shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, sesame seeds, which is new this year as of January 1, 2023, and soybeans. So we need to make sure that they're there, and they need to be in the common name form. And there are a couple of different ways that you can do that. So some of the things you need to consider before making your label, and this is going to make me talk really fast. I need to figure this out, guys. Make sure that the allergen statement is no smaller than the ingredients list. In fact, I bold mine just so people see that as well, but you don't need to. You need to use the same wording as the major 9 allergens. So for example, if you're using butter, butter is really milk. You're not going to put butter, you're going to put milk. If you have a nut and it's a peanut, you're going to specifically say that it's a peanut. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I have to pause for a second. This is going to drive me nuts. It's just going way, way, way too fast for me. Sorry. From the beginning. Escape. I'm just going to do it this way so I can control it myself. Can you still see my screen?
Nope, you're
Okay,
not.
then I have to go in and share it this way.
Just take it off automatic.
I'm trying to. New computer. Slideshow. Custom show. From beginning, escape. Keep slides updated. Use timings. I don't know. Here's the setup.
You want to hit custom slideshow.
There we go, custom shows. It's not showing me anything, Shelley. I'm just going to do this. It'll be just as easy. I'm going to get to where I'm at. Okay. we're going to go right here. I'm pulling this up. I apologize, guys. I'm so sorry. There, can you at least see it?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. So now I'm gonna minimize this again. Okay. Okay, so the milk allergens we've already done. So there are 9 major allergens. So for example, when you're talking about butter, you're gonna put milk. If you're talking about flour, you're gonna put wheat. It doesn't matter that it's whole grain wheat or all-purpose or a whole grain flour or all-purpose flour, it's wheat, and wheat is the allergen. They're both true, but then you need to list the name of the allergen. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, and some things to consider before you make your label. If you suspect that a consumer may not know what that particular ingredient is, the allergen, it's best to declare that specifically in a claim right away afterwards. Does that make sense? In parentheses, for example, contains milk. If the product includes either tree nuts, fish, or crustacean shellfish, then you must specify the ingredient that falls within that category. So crustacean fish, shellfish would be like shrimp. This is gonna drive me nuts. So sorry. Why can't I get this to work today? Okay, because ultimately what matters is that your allergen statements is truthful and not misleading. And it's super, super important. For example, my daughter brought home somebody who had an allergen to peanuts and shellfish, and he had such a bad reaction to shellfish that I literally cleared everything out of my house completely because he was that allergic. So you need to make sure that whoever's purchasing your product, if they have an allergy, they know not to purchase your product because it's in there. Which brings me to also to like gluten-free. I don't know if people make gluten-free products. If you make gluten-free products, isn't there some sort of certification, if I remember correctly, that you actually have to go through to make that claim? Amy or Cindy, can you speak to that at all?
Not yet. That's a really good question. I believe, because I don't do baked good, I haven't done baked goods. I believe if you're doing licensed, okay, so you don't have to be certified gluten-free to make gluten-free items in cottage food. If you're doing licensed food, then in fact you do.
Yeah.
In order to claim that on the label. But if you're just doing cottage food, apparently Amy Camp says, no, you don't need to go through that training.
Okay. And I'm going to double check that with Carriveau. If you are claiming it though, before liability, I would make darn sure that you are in a gluten-free environment because cross-contamination happens so quickly and so easily.
Right.
But I am going to follow up with everybody and I'm going to check with Carriveau. He's my contact through FDA.
And that is something I wanted to reiterate, Jennifer, that listing what's in the food is critical, but being cognizant of allergens in the cooking environment, especially when you're in your home kitchen, is super important. I have a friend who is super allergic to sesame, and I can't tell you how many times she's been in the ER because somebody made something that had no sesame in it, but they were making something in their kitchen that they had used sesame or a utensil or whatever had sesame on it. So, and I know for some of the really serious allergens like shellfish and peanut, that level of cross-contamination can be very dangerous. So people need to be cognizant, not just of what they're putting in their product, but the environment in which they're preparing it.
Yeah, and that leads me to like something simple here in Minnesota, for example. I have an approved lefse recipe that falls within the water activity range, so I can actually produce that and sell it as a cottage food producer. When I'm producing my cottage or my lefse, flour is everywhere. I have rolled up to 600 to 800 rounds in a long period of time. And if you walk into my kitchen, there is a haze. It almost looks like a flour mill because there's been so much flour. So just think about that. Everything that's getting into, it's getting into crevices, everything. I have a furnace where I change my air filter every month and everything like that. But that's something that's living and breathing in my house. And I really don't care how much cleaning I really do. If I was produced, I would never in a million years in my home produce anything for a celiac. Ever, 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 ever. Now, if I had somebody who called and they wanted something that was gluten-free, I have a conversation with them and I make sure that they do not have celiacs, that it's more just for, it's a dietary choice and not a dietary requirement for their health. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So whatever you do, make sure that if you have allergens that you are using in your house. I just recently had a conversation about peanut butter because we were looking at different options for different things, like peanut butter, for example. It's an allergen. And it made our conversation made me think about all of the products, where I am storing them, even though I have them on separate shelves and stuff like that. I may go as far as reorganizing my kitchen this spring and putting all of my allergens in one locked area. I have stuff that my family uses, which is my husband and myself, and then I have an area just for my baking products and that type of thing. But I may go as far now as all my nuts, all my peanut butter, all of that is in one locked area, just so that I can do my best to keep that as separate as possible, just because of the huge liability. And I would hate to ever make anybody sick.
Deborah Lutz asked in the comments, are we required to say, quote, this product is made in a place that has produced items like wheat, blah, blah, blah. No, for cottage food, you're not required to have that labeling. But again, it's just really good common sense and a liability issue for a producer that you really be cognizant of the environment in which you're producing something so you don't put somebody with an allergy at risk.
Yep. And that leads to our next statement. The claim is not required, but proper cleaning and production should prevent cross-contamination. I do go as far in my labels as adding, I am not, this may contain traces of da 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 da. And so a may contains is a tool to limit business liability for any allergens that show up in your product, but don't rely on this type of claim to compensate for bad food processing practices. It may stop someone with a food allergy from becoming critically ill or eating your product and becoming critically ill, but it doesn't mean that that food business is exempt from liability related to those allergens in your products. So you're going to want to make sure that you have good SOPs in place for cleaning and that type of thing. If you are making, for example, we just came from Christmas time, and how many people made peanut butter blossoms? So if you're making peanut butter blossoms, they have peanut butter in it. So you're going to want to make sure that if you're making other things that day, that may be one of the last things you make. Or if you have to go back and forth, you're going to have to go through a thorough cleaning and just, to make sure that that area where you're prepping food is free from contamination as best as you possibly can. Okay. So how do we build a compliant product label for cottage foods? You're going to write your allergen statement based on the information you collect. So when you're looking at your products, for example, can you see this, what I'm holding up when I'm sharing my screen? No? Well, I've got a huge container of M&Ms. Okay.
You're blurred.
It's blurred. Oh, here, let me change my background. How in the world? I'll just talk it through. So basically, I'm holding up a container of M&Ms. It could be a bag of chocolate chips. It could be so many things. And what that means is that you need to look at that ingredient and you need to see what's on there, because you may have allergens and that type of thing in there. So all of the products that you're using in all the ingredients that you're using in your product for sale, you're going to want to compile a list of them. You're going to want to look at the ingredients and the sub-ingredients, because as a cottage food producer, you are not required to label sub-ingredients, but your products, your ingredients that you're using, they may have sub-ingredients. If there's an allergen in the sub-ingredient, you are required to list that on your label. So you want to make sure that when you are building that label, that you have all of the information compiled and a list of allergens that are there. Because it'll really help you when you are building that that label. Because how many of you build labels and you sometimes just don't have enough information and then you have to backtrack? If you build a good label once, you have all that information, it's going to just make your bookkeeping and processes so much easier. So you're going to build that label based on everything you've collected. It's going to have a comprehensive list of all ingredients, additives, and colors in your product that they may contain. While colors are not listed as a necessary allergen to be listed by the FDA, I strongly encourage you, especially like with Valentine's Day coming up, we're going to be using a lot of red dye. And there are some people that are deathly ill, become deathly ill from that. So you're going to want to make sure that any allergen that your customer may have, that it's on that product label. And so, for example, I don't know, I'm going to see if I can pull that up my screen. If I take that down and so here, for example, here is American Color. On their label, it talks about the certified red 3. That is actually a list of one of the watched items by the FDA. And if you look at your M&Ms and stuff, it is listed there. Okay. So here's a picture of a nutritional label, and it's listing the allergens. It has the name of the food source, and in this one, after the food source, so ingredients, enriched flour, it talks about wheat flour, enriched flour, which is wheat flour, barley, malted barley, niacin, so on and so forth. They have listed all of the allergens and the sub-ingredients directly behind the common name of the food. That is one way you can do it. Or you can take your label, and ours are going to look totally different. This is from the FDA's website, and you list the ingredients, and they have sub-ingredients in there as well on this label in parentheses, and that's because it's required by the FDA. We are not required by Minnesota state law to put the sub-ingredients, but we always encourage you as an association to put all of the ingredients on. As much, the more information you can put, the better for the customer, the better for your business, the better for your product, better for you. And then at the end, they have contains. So you can see contains wheat, milk, eggs, and soy. And soy is a big one. Soy is in so many things that everybody just doesn't realize that's in there. And that's where it goes back to knowing what soy is, like I cannot even pronounce it. But for example, let's say your cooking spray that you use to spray your pans, that has soy in it quite often, depending on what you're using. Your M&Ms have soy in them. And people are highly allergic, so you need to make sure you know your ingredients, your sub-ingredients. Okay. And remember, your allergens need to be minimally in the same size font as your ingredients. Again, here we have the parentheses. So example, here's the lecithin. I can't even say it. Lecithin, is that how you say it? Okay, lecithin, which is soy, flour, which is wheat, whey, which is milk, and it's immediately after, or it's or next to the list of the ingredients, or it's in a contains statement, which is contains wheat, milk, soy. And it needs to be in descending order of prominence, which is really important, so they know what the majority of your product makes. So here I'm going to just read to you, here's a cookie recipe, and it's just a basic white sugar cookie recipe. It's not mine, I just took it off the internet. And it calls for, how they have it written in the recipe is 3 cups of flour, all purpose, 3/4 teaspoon baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon salt, a cup of butter, a cup of white sugar, 1 egg large, and a tablespoon of milk. So it goes by volume, so you're going to want to know the weight of those ingredients. Some people already have their recipes, converted to grams or ounces and that type of thing. And what you're going to need to do is make sure that that recipe is completely converted to the same weight. So I usually do grams because that's going to be your most accurate and easy to use. And we're going to pull this up here quick because you can go to the King Arthur website, which I will have on there for you here in just a minute. I have too many things going on here. Let's move this over here. See if I can, oh, I can even move that. That's awesome. And so here on the King Arthur website, which is in the it's in this presentation, and which will be made available to anybody who wants it, and it is on our website from the MNCFPA website. You can type in the ingredients. So let's say you do sugar, and it's going to give you an estimation, or a more accurate way you can do as well is you could actually weigh it, because it will vary a little bit by product, but shouldn't be too much. So here, a cup
Here,
of
King
white
Arthur,
granulated.
it's not showing, Jen.
Oh, sorry. There we go. Share. There you go. How's that?
There you go.
Okay, so here's the website. It's kingarthursbaking.com/learn/ingredient weight chart. And you type in what you're looking for. I was looking for sugar. It gives me a list of a bunch of different sugars. I'm looking for white granulated sugar. A cup of it weighs 198 pounds. So that shows you, it gives you a good idea of a starting point if you don't have a kitchen scale, and then you're able to do the math and figure out from there the weights. But if you don't have a digital scale, I would highly recommend you getting one. They're fairly inexpensive, and they really do come in handy. Alrighty, so I have this recipe. So what I did is I took and I figured it out. So 3 cups of flour weighs about 360 grams. That's going to be your first ingredient on your label. The next one, it was a cup of softened butter. It's 226 grams. So that's going to be your next. And then a cup of white sugar, 198 grams. A tablespoon of milk, 14.19 grams. 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, 3 grams. Oops, and I have the egg. I'm sorry, I missed the egg. The egg would go before the milk. That's 50 grams. And then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt is 1.5 grams. So it took me once I had all these tools that I could use, it literally took me just a couple of minutes to go in, write it all down, and calculate it. Does that make sense to everybody? Did I leave anything out there, Amy and Cindy? Alrighty, and here's a list of common weights of common ingredients used in baking. So you can see all the different ones. I broke down butter a little bit more for you, and this will be made available, but I would highly recommend going to that King Arthur website because it has a very detailed list, and it's something that you can download as well. I find it easier just to use it on the internet because then I can just type in the search bar and it pulls it up for me. What about spices and flavorings? Spices, natural flavoring, and other natural flavors or artificial flavors, are they declared into the ingredients list? Yeah, they can be declared by using their specific name, their common name or usual. You can also just use spices, flavor, or natural flavoring. So if you have, for example, ingredients, apple slices, water, cane syrup, and corn syrup, modifying cornstarch, spices, salt, natural flavoring, and artificial flavoring. It's just going to be in order of predominance. And typically that's just a trace, a lot of them. So they will let you get away with sometimes just with spices and so on and so forth. But again, that if it is an allergen, you need to make sure that it's there. So yeah, it is good to list them all by name. And the food coloring. Do either of you, Amy or Cindy, have a lot of knowledge on food coloring? No, okay.
No, but we'll learn.
Okay, and I don't have a great knowledge. It was color additives from certification. They can be collected right on the website from wherever you're purchasing it because they are required by law to have that there. And I always refer back to that red dye because a lot of times, or in our meats, there's actually red dye. And I had an employee when I lived in North Dakota that was deathly allergic to it, and she just did not eat red meat because she would be hospitalized from it. So again, you just have different varying degrees of reactions. I know there's been some studies done to linking it to certain conditions and that type of thing, and in bad reactions in children and so on and so forth. So you are going to have those customers to where this information is truly important. While it's not required by law to have it in there, I do list this, especially at Christmas time when I'm selling my cookie boxes, or at Valentine's Day. I make sure that I list what's in there, because it's the children who are going to be making these and eating them. And there are a lot of parents that really look for that information. And if you have it on hand, that's great. Another idea, if it's too much for a label, because we all know how long our labels can get, maybe have just a little side piece of paper with a handout with it saying these dyes are in it. Since it's not actually required, it doesn't need to be on the label, but you could include it on something else. And then here is a link down here. And there's a ton of information on food ingredients and colors with the information for allergens and that type of thing. All righty. So again, here's an AmeriColor food coloring product with the allergen information.
And all food colorings are not the same, because I found out through reading the ingredients on the Wilton's food coloring that they actually list shellfish because it's made it in a factory that has shellfish in it.
Yep. So it's really important to look at all of that. Another thing, if you have a person who maybe is sensitive to this or has an allergy to it, because now we all know too, we can make dog treats. And a year ago, December, I really went down the rabbit hole because my dog, I love my children, I love my family, but I love my dog. My children are all adults now, so he's kind of taken the new role as this is my child and I want you to be here as long as you can. So, and actually this year when I was making red icing, royal icing for some of my cookie kits, I put beet powder in there, actual 100% beet powder, because back in the day when they'd make a red velvet cake, they used beets for it and that type of thing. So there are all natural dyes out there and powders that you can choose to use. Another one, if you're using a lot of brown, put cocoa in there instead. Yep, somebody might have a nut allergy, so you'll have to realize that some cocos are processed in plants with nuts, and some cocos actually have nuts in them. But it's a great way to make your icing taste better too, because a lot of times if you are using that dye, some of them will leave a really bad bitter aftertaste in your mouth. So there are other options out there. Okay, so now we're going to move on because I'm getting really windy here.
So
label example.
Jennifer, I'm just kind of watching the chat. Pat Braun asked, can you have ingredients that you consider, quote, proprietary, that you want to keep your secret ingredients? I don't know the formal rule. I mean, if it's a substantial ingredient, no, you can't.
Not in cottage foods. Any ingredient that you put into that. Now, any ingredient that you put into your product has to be labeled. The sub-ingredient does not need to be labeled, but the ingredient must be labeled. You're not giving them the proportions by putting it in weight order. They just are going to know that there's way more flour than there is salt in this product, or there's more potatoes than there is flour in this product, and so on and so forth. But by law, you are actually required to list your ingredients and your allergens, but not your sub-ingredients. And I will show you at the end here, I'll screen share the Minnesota State Revisor Code so you can look at that. So here's a label example. So we have different ways we can write our labels. As a sole proprietor is the same as a DBA, doing business as. You're an individual, you are not a corporation, you are just you. You're a human being, and even though you're considered a small business, you're still just you. So here's Karen Peterson shared with us, thank you. And it's Karen K. Peterson, DBA Confections by Karen. She uses both, but she really, by law, would only have to put in their Confections by Karen. She chooses to put her address on this label instead of her registration number, If you don't want to use your address, you can simply put your registration number. The reason you can have one or the others, the customer needs to be able to find you or the regulatory authority, the MDA, if there is a problem with your product. And then she adds her phone number. That's not required by law, but I highly recommend it. I have mine on there. And she has the name of the named above is the registered cottage food producer with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, and these items are homemade and not subject to state inspection. The clause, these items are homemade and not subject to state inspection, is required by law. On there you see apple cider cake donuts. They're made with flour. She puts her sub-ingredients in there, which you're not required by law, but again, we advocate for it. Sugar, brown sugar, apple cider, buttermilk, so on and so forth. And then she has allergens at the end: milk, eggs, wheat, fried and vegetable oil, soy, and then the date it was made. The date it was made, that's one of the questions we get quite frequently. The date that something was made is the final day that you are assembling it all together. We do have some cottage food producers who will make cookie dough, portion it out and freeze it, and then they'll take it out at a later date and they will bake it. So on that label, the day that you bake it and package it for sale there is the day that you're going to put that date on your label. Now, for record keeping purposes, you're going to want to know the date you're going to want to know too, the date you first created that product, but that is not required by law. It's just going to help you with better bookkeeping and that type of thing. And then you would at that point, if there was a problem with the food, if, for example, I buy my flour and my sugar in 50 and 25 pound containers, or bags, and then I put them into food safe containers up on wheels, and I can roll them in and out of my pantry. What I do is I take it a step further and I put the lot number. I take the lot number off of that bag of flour and everything, and I put it on there, and I keep track of that so that I have a paper trail of my stuff. That's how they do it in industry. They document everything. We are not required by law, but that's just my anal nature. So, and it's also making the product safer for my customers, because I'm able to trace it back. If, for example, we have an outbreak of something with flour, I'm able to look back and see whether or not any of my product was made with that flour, and then I can let my customers know as well. Moving on to the next label. Here's an example. We have Sally Baker. Sally Baker may be an LLC, or Sally Baker may not be. I'm assuming here what I did is Sally Baker is just a person. She has not filed a DBA, and she has a registration number, and she has the name of her product, the date that she made it, the ingredients, and then the allergens, and then she has the disclaimer that these products are homemade and not subject to state inspection. Next one, Baking in Minnesota LLC. That is considered, it's an LLC. It's registered with the Secretary of State. It is a business. It is the business name. It doesn't, and whoever is registered with that is the responsible person, but the only thing required on that label then is the name of the business, the registration number, again, the name of the product, the ingredients, the allergens, the date that it was made, and that these items are homemade and not subject to state inspection. And then we get into a new one, our pet treats, which are now allowed to be sold under the cottage food exemption. The uniqueness with pets is they do not have an allergen list. We have all the same requirements as far as labeling, who's producing the product, the registration number or address, the name, and then common name of ingredients. Some ingredients are not required. You also need to put that this product is homemade and not subject to a state inspection. But animals do not, there's no official allergen list for animals. So you do not have to have an allergen statement on that label. However, there are many foods that dogs, and then we can also make cat treats as well, cannot have. For example, grapes, hard stop on grapes. Some dogs, my dog, he eats a little onion. He doesn't eat a lot, but he will have things with traces of onion, and he's never had any adverse effects. But that's going to be very individualized. On our website, we do have a recording from last year where we had a vet nutritionist come and speak on this, and we have information as well. We also have recommendations on our non-potentially hazardous page of our website with a little information about pets. And if you have any questions about what dogs can and cannot eat, I would highly recommend that you reach out to somebody that has the knowledge, whether it's a veterinarian nutritionist, the MDA, Food and Feed Safety, or looking on our website so that you can get some quick answers, but then seeking out the professionals just before you go to make them, because you don't want to make anybody's pet sick. Okay, and here are some resources for the product labeling. The MDA, you'll need to scroll down to the labeling part and then select the training link. The FDA has a great downloadable media guide. And then there's a few other ones with the FDA, the extension, courses and events. They have a food safety tier 2 training that goes much more in depth than our tier 1 training that we take as tier 1 providers. As an association and as a cottage food producer, highly encourage people to do the tier 2 training. It's done every 3 years and the cost is $50, I think. Everything is done online. But hoping maybe someday we will have another in-person event. Just don't know. It just depends on the direction you guys decide to go. And then labels. When you write your labels, you can buy label printers specifically for labels. I actually, or you can farm them out to somebody else. I find it easiest to use Avery shipping labels, and I have different sizes of them based on what I use. I'm using it for, and I actually go to Avery and you can click the product. And if you don't want to buy the Avery product and you want to buy the off-brand one, they actually have on the off-brand product, they'll say this is a made like Avery brand 1, 2, 3, 4. So then you would just click Avery brand 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you can just print them off at home, and you can print them in the quantities that you need instead of having to purchase 1,000 of them or whatever. You're just really able to individualize things as you make new products and create new products. What else?
There is a question in the chat. If maybe Cindy can answer that one.
What is the question, Shelley? Why don't you read it?
Can you clarify if Genesis, triticum, wheat, hordeum, barley, and Secal rye are all considered wheat for the purposes of labeling?
I would say yes.
There you go. It is 10:51 and Mr. Kurt Schneider is here.
Yeah, and he's great. So I'm gonna turn it over to him right now.
Thank you
If
very
there are no
much, Amy and Cindy.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Well, hello, everybody. First thing I want to do before we get into much of anything is I'd like you all to go ahead and unmute yourselves, if you would, please. Watch y'all unmute yourselves here. All right.
You're
All right.
still sharing your screen.
All right.
I know I'm
I-
working on it. Sorry.
I'll put my screen up in a second, guys. But first off, good morning, everybody.
Good
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to hear all your voices. And I wanted to do a sound check, make sure you could hear me as well as I can hear you. So I'm going to ask one quick question before we get into the presentation, and then I'll have you go back and mute yourselves. Just shout it out if you know the answer or have an idea. How much money do you think it costs to get a product from your home kitchen to a store shelf in a grocery store? How much from start to finish? R&D, testing, scale up, all of it. How much money do you think it costs on average?
Thousands.
Thousands?
I'm going through that now.
You probably have expert understanding of it.
No, nothing yet.
20
What-
grand.
20 grand. Okay, there's a good start.
25 grand, yeah.
25.
Yeah.
Okay. Any others? How about if you guys add a 0 to both of your numbers,
Ah,
and you'll start to get close.
really?
Yeah. Now some people can do it less. Some people it costs more, but on average, it costs between $200,000 and $250,000 to get a product from an idea in your head onto a store shelf. So there's all kinds of ways that cost can be split out. We're going to talk about one of them today, and that would be commercial kitchens. So if you want to go ahead and mute yourselves now. I'll go ahead and share my screen, and we can get talking. All right. All right. Okay. Everybody still with me? You can all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Well, okay. Let's get started. First off, thank you so much, Jennifer, for inviting me to come and talk about this particular topic today about how you can scale up your cottage business, your home business into the next step, which I would consider the next logical step, and that would be commercial kitchens. I'm sure you've heard a lot about commercial kitchens. What I want to do today is kind of dispel some of the myths of commercial kitchens, walk you through what it's going to take for you to scale up to a kitchen. And I think most importantly, kind of give you an idea of what the costs will be to go from your home kitchen to a commercial kitchen, what benefits you will receive, what challenges you might have. We'll go through all of that. And I promise you, we will be done before 12 o'clock. I don't have very many slides, so I want to make it more a Q&A type of thing, but let's go through the slides and hang on to your questions. You can go ahead and write them in the chat, and then afterwards I'll go back and address them all. All right. So as I was thinking about scaling up into a commercial kitchen, I began to think about the brand owner, you, and what it looks like for you to think about, gosh, at what point in time do I want to consider moving from my kitchen into a commercial kitchen, contract manufacturer, food truck, brick and mortar. By the way, we'll touch on all those in a little bit as well. And I thought, how am I going to title this presentation? And I thought about it a little bit, and I came up with, I think it's the brand owner's dilemma. I think the dilemma is, how do I know? How do I know when it's time? How can I afford it? How much does it cost? These are all questions we're going to answer here in the next half hour or so. So let's get started. Again, the big question, how do you get from your kitchen into a manufacturing that can do more product faster and at better cost, hopefully? So let's talk about, we're going to put out the agenda today. We're going to go over a number of topics here. First off, the big question, and this is the question that you need to ask yourself when you're getting ready to go to a commercial kitchen. We're going to talk about food safety in your home kitchen, because what I want you to start to think about as we go through this presentation, as you're thinking about making that move, is you have to start looking at your home kitchen as a food manufacturing facility. And once you get that mindset going, we'll talk about all of the documentation, all the records you need to keep, all the things you need to be aware of, all of those things that will help you prepare to move into a more regulated space, i.e. a commercial kitchen, who has licenses and where you will need a license from the state to do your business as well. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what it takes to scale up to the next level to commercial kitchens, what you need to think about, what kind of equipment you need to think about, how much it's all going to cost, and when's the right time to push that button. I'll go over the other choices in brief detail, because I don't want to spend too much time on contract manufacturers, food trucks, brick and mortar. Those are topics for a whole nother conversation that we can take up at a later time if you so choose. Then I'm going to give you the kind of my final consideration on, is it time? Is it time to make that jump? And then we'll leave plenty of time for questions and a final wrap. So that's the agenda. Let's go ahead and start with the big question. Very simply, why are you thinking of scaling up? So when I think about that question, and I ask all of my entrepreneurs that are working out of their home, why do you think you need to go to a contract manufacturer, which is the leap that a lot of cottage food entrepreneurs do, where when they come to me, they say, yeah, I'm trying to find somebody to make my product. This step is much safer, much less costly, and the chances of you succeeding if you're going from your kitchen to a commercial kitchen are much higher than if you go from your kitchen straight to a contract manufacturer. Again, I'm not going to spend much time on the co-man piece because it involves a whole different set of rules, regulations, costs, etc. But I want to tell you right now, if you're thinking about taking your cottage business from your home to a contract manufacturer, I would ask that you pause and think about these next few slides before you do that. So when I think about the question, why are you thinking about scaling up? I can think of some good reasons that you would want to think about that. One would be I'm selling more than I can make. Obviously, if you outstrip the capacity of your kitchen, then it's time to move to another kitchen, hopefully bigger, something that you can make more capacity on. Another good reason, I can't ensure food safety in my home kitchen. When we get to the slide on food safety, I want you to really think about where you're making your product right now and how it would fit against the types of things that I'm going to lay out here, types of challenges to make your product safe to consume. Then I have some not so good reasons why people want to scale up. One of them is I want to find somebody to make it for me. Guys, if I had a dime for every time I talked to an entrepreneur and they said, I just want to find somebody that can make this product for me, they're going to have a rough time with it because that's not the right reason for going to a commercial kitchen or going to a co-man. There are better reasons, like the ones above. Or I don't have the time to make it myself. That could be a good reason. I consider it a bad reason because if the cottage business is just kind of a side hustle for you, a hobby, you're not ready to move into commercial kitchens and above. You have to pay a lot of attention to your food business before you're ready to go even to a commercial kitchen because of all the rules and regulations that you're going to be facing. So the fact that you don't have the time to make it yourself, I would say is more of a excuse than a reason. So if you need the capacity, if you've outstripped your kitchen capacity and you can't ensure you can make it safely in your house, then I would suggest you look at commercial kitchens. Okay, so let's talk about food safety in your home kitchen. And what do I mean about that? So I start out with a beautiful kitchen, all the nice wood cabinetry and the granite countertops and wood floor. And I ask myself, what do I need to do to get it to function like a commercial kitchen with its stainless steel work surfaces and fume hoods and multi-stage ovens, convection, microwaves, deep fryers, everything that's in those places, a washable floor that all slopes down to a drain. These are all things that that we're going to try and get into your home kitchen so you can be ready when you go to a commercial kitchen. So let's talk about what some of those are. Let's start to think about your kitchen as the manufacturing facility. And again, the reason I'm asking you to do this is because the faster you can think about your kitchen as a manufacturing facility and be prepared to make product like it is, easier transition you're going to have into a commercial kitchen. So things to consider: sanitation. How do you clean your kitchen before you make your product? How do you ensure that the peanut butter sandwich you made for your son before they went off to school, might be dating myself, I apologize for that, maybe a dabble of that peanut butter is sitting on the counter where you're going to make your product for your business? How do you ensure that that's gone? How do you ensure that there's not things in your pantry that could somehow get into the food product? There's all kinds of things to consider when you're making that product at home, and sanitation is going to be one of them. It is of the utmost importance when you go to a commercial kitchen because it's a shared space, and they're going to expect that you clean and sanitize your work area before you leave. So it is literally free of any other substances. Isolation. When you make product in your kitchen at home, are you isolated from every other place in the home? Is it easy for people to walk in from the outside and come right into your kitchen? Do you have those doors locked while you're producing? Do you have a barrier, whether it's an actual barrier or just a line on the floor? When you're in production, people don't come in and cross that line. Do you have people smoking in the dining room while you're making your product in your kitchen? Do you have allergens in your pantry that are over your stove where you're making your product? Okay, these are all things that are taken care of for you at the commercial kitchen, the things that you need to start thinking about in your home. How do I make that area clean, sanitary, and make sure that every product that I can produce there is safe to consume? Then there's record keeping. Not just the manufacturing records, which we're going to talk about in a second here, but things like cleaning records, logs of waste product that you're making, If you have a HACCP plan, if you started to think about a HACCP plan and you have a critical control point such as temperature, how are you recording that on each batch that you make? I tend to use a book, and this is one I actually found on Amazon, which I thought was pretty nice. This is actually just a record book that has logs in it for food temperature, your kitchen cleaning log and checklist, which believe me is incredibly thorough. And you probably don't have to do it all, but it's all there that you can kind of look at and make your own cleaning and sanitizing SOP to use in your house. Again, the reason I'm asking you to do it here, I don't want to belabor the point, but if you understand how to do it at your kitchen, when you go to a commercial kitchen, it'll be second nature for you to create a cleaning and sanitizing log for that space. And then a food waste log, probably not a big deal in your home kitchen, but once you get into a commercial kitchen, let's say you're making a baked product and you have to make the dough first. Okay, so you make the dough in a 50-quart Hobart mixer, big piece of dough. Okay, goes onto the work surface at the commercial kitchen and you start rolling it out. By the time you're done cutting your shapes, you'll have a big ball of waste dough. Okay, probably not a big deal in your home kitchen because you're not making a lot of product. But once you get into a commercial kitchen, that becomes a number that you want to track. How much are you actually throwing away? Because that goes right to your bottom line cost of making your product. And sometimes that can be pretty significant. One of the things I see a lot of my clients that go from their home kitchen to a commercial kitchen is the concept of food waste they haven't really thought about because they're making such small batches, and throwing away a little handful of dough at the end is no big deal. But when you get to the end of a 50-quart batch of dough and you have 5 pounds left over, now you're starting to talk about real costs. So you want to consider that food waste log and even start measuring it if you want at home, so you understand just how much product you're throwing away versus how much product you're making. And then finally, storage and distribution. Sounds like something you don't have to worry about in your home kitchen. But in a commercial kitchen, it's very important because you'll be sharing freezers, you'll be sharing refrigerators, you'll be sharing warehousing space. Typically, you won't have your own dedicated space to store your equipment and materials. Some do. If you do want to go to a commercial kitchen that has caged areas, I can help you find one of those. I know Jennifer can as well. As a matter of fact, I know Jennifer is working diligently on creating a list of commercial kitchens, and I hope that's not a secret. But there are lists that are out there right now, but none of them are comprehensive. So it's a little bit difficult to get a good read on what's out there. But some of them do have cages that are part of your lease agreement that you can actually put all of your material in, roll it in on a cart, and lock it tight for the night. So all of your specialized equipment, materials, food processing materials are all safe in one place. But in terms of your kitchen, where are you going to store your product? Are you going to store it in the refrigerator right next to products that have allergens in it? Maybe you have a leftover stir fry that has soy sauce in it. And that's in a bowl with a aluminum foil over it. You're going to put your product right next to that. You might have to consider putting soy allergen on your label if you do that. Commercial kitchens are a lot better at separation and segregation, that you don't necessarily have to worry about those allergens. But if the place has people from 10 different clients and they're making products that cover the gamut of allergens, you're going to need to make sure that those are listed on your label, at least in terms of product manufactured in a food that processes soy, peanut butter, dairy, eggs, those type of things. So you want to consider that and start thinking about it in your kitchen. How are you making sure that your finished product is safe from cross-contamination? And again, in distribution, for a home kitchen, you're probably distributing it in your car, driving it to food shows, driving it to farmers markets. So not necessarily something I have to worry about too much in your home kitchen. But when you get to a commercial kitchen, now you're talking about quantities. Most of my clients still use their car or a van to move product around and even to deliver it by hand. But you have to start to consider at what point where you're going to need to have some sort of distribution to get into things like grocery stores and co-ops and those type of things, and big box sellers. Not too early to start thinking about that. What else do you have to think about? Well, one of the things that you're going to have, it's a requirement for going into a commercial kitchen, is a CFPM, or a Certified Food Protection Manager license. For those of you that don't know what a CFPM is, it's basically a short course that you take online. It's administered through a number of third parties, some of which are endorsed by the state. Those are the ones that you have to use. It's about an 8-hour class, and then you take a test afterwards, all online. And within a day or two, you should be able to complete the course, pass the test, and then the state will, that organization will issue you a certificate that you are trained in food safety and food sanitation procedures and can bring those to the commercial kitchen. A good idea to even look at doing that now. Now, I know that the cottage industry and Jennifer has things to help you with that, to help you with learning all the safety and sanitation, the food safety and sanitation pieces that you need. But again, the CFPM is something you're going to need when you're in a commercial kitchen. So if you're even thinking about going down that road, not a bad idea to take a look at taking that test right now. It's fairly inexpensive as well. And then finally, once you're in production, what's your production records? Even in your home kitchen, do you have a recipe with instructions on how to make your product? Is that actually written down so somebody else in your family, if they are helping you, can actually make your product? If you don't have it written down, you should probably consider writing down some sort of instructions where you can record temperatures, you can record times, you can record how much product you made, how much product you wasted possibly, because those are all the types of things that you're going to need full batch records when you get into the commercial kitchen and you're starting to track all this stuff. And also for traceability in case, God forbid there's a recall or there's something in your product that you want to monitor. You'll need those records. Do you have shelf life studies underway? Stability. Some of you might put, I have a 6-month shelf life on my product because you've seen similar products out in the grocery stores that have that. Well, the FDA, once you get to, even the MDA, once you get to that point in a commercial kitchen and beyond, you need to have studies that prove that you indeed have 6 months of shelf life on your product. And that involves simply taking some of your product, putting it in controlled environment where if you're going to sell it off the shelf, you want to make sure it's in your house someplace that's air conditioned, heated in the winter, that mimics a grocery store. If it's refrigerated, you're going to want to do your study in the refrigerator. Frozen, same thing. And then you pull out one of the products every month for 6 months, real time. 4 months if you're going to claim 4, 6 if you're going to claim 6, 12 if you're going to claim 12, and taste it and look at it. Has it changed to the point where it's no longer acceptable to you? Has it changed to the point where it's no longer acceptable to your customer? Different questions. We'll cover that in a separate topic somewhere down the road. Think about that. Having that in line when you go into a commercial kitchen, having that already known is a good thing when you start mass producing your labels for your product, because you're going to put a shelf life stamp on that as you're going through production. It'd be nice to have the data to back it up. And then again, storage and distribution, because once you get into a commercial kitchen, storage and distribution becomes something of a challenge. Okay? So that's where food safety in your home kitchen, you can start to think about it and start to apply some of those principles that you're going to need for a commercial kitchen into your home kitchen. So now let's talk about the actual commercial kitchen. What is it? Probably nothing you guys haven't already seen. It's a licensed space where small and startup food manufacturing businesses can prepare their goods legally while providing the scheduled and budgetary flexibility that many small businesses need. Simple, definition pulled right out of the dictionary. But what does that actually mean? What does it actually mean to go into a commercial kitchen? They're often shared spaces, often with 2 or more tenants in production simultaneously. If they do that, they usually tend to put you in different corners. So if you're making a baked product on one end, they might have another client on the other end that's making candy product. There are commercial kitchens that are certified for meat products. There are commercial kitchens that are certified as gluten-free. There are kitchens that have dedicated area for allergen processing. Those are all considerations that you're going to need to know as you get into that process. Keep in mind, they're shared spaces. You're going to have to work with the other clients to make sure that the area is clean. They're going to make sure their area is clean. And then when you share the spaces, the refrigerators, the freezers, the walk-in fridges and freezers, that you know that your product is safe from cross-contamination. They can be rented or leased by the hour, by the week, by the month, by the year. You can sign a lease for 4 months, 6 months, month to month, a year. There's practically limitless ways that you can work out an agreement with a commercial kitchen. It's typically up to the owner of the commercial kitchen to set what their lease requirements are. Most of them want you to sign a year lease, but others are flexible. You can actually sign up on their site. You get approved to work in their facility just by talking to the person and them understanding what your product is and you understanding how to manufacture it in a commercial kitchen. And then you can actually just sign up hours to want to work and you pay it by the hour. You can go as low as that. I've had some commercial kitchens that charge clients over $2,000 a month for use of their kitchen. I think that's exorbitant, but I have seen it happen. And again, they're the next logical step after your home kitchen. Now, I want to make a distinction here between a commercial kitchen and a ghost kitchen. Ghost kitchen is a kitchen, a larger kitchen. It looks like a commercial kitchen, something more like this picture on the right corner, where there's somebody in there that's manufacturing the food that's ready to eat, that's going to be served immediately. In other words, a ghost restaurant that uses DoorDash or Uber Eats to send their product to their customers. Customers will call in, they'll type up a ticket. It's almost like a restaurant. They make your food, package it up, DoorDash comes in, picks it up. Commercial kitchen doesn't have ghost kitchen clients in it. And if they do, I would seriously consider whether you want to work there or not. Reason is that ghost kitchen regulations are different than regular food processing, manufacturing, storage, and distribution. Ghost kitchens don't have as high of a barrier for food safety and food processing that a commercial kitchen or a food manufacturer will have. So keep that in mind. I've seen commercial kitchens that act as ghost kitchens that would never pass an inspection with MDH to manufacture food to be sold at grocery stores. So keep that in mind. Look for a commercial kitchen that does not have ghost kitchen as part of its tenants. Going a little bit further, let's talk a little bit about things to consider when you're going into a commercial kitchen. Things to consider: the rent and the lease costs. And the next slide, I'm actually going to show you how much it might cost you to go to a commercial kitchen, so you can start to look at that from a budgetary standpoint and plan accordingly. But you need to know what the rent and lease costs are. You need to know the equipment requirements. So when you go to a commercial kitchen, you basically will have, depending on the kitchen, you could have access to some storage containers, some utensils, some baking, frying, cooking equipment, but maybe you won't. And in those cases, you need to buy all of your own equipment. So you need to buy your own fry pans, you need to buy your own spatulas, your own rolling pins, your own containers. This is where a place like Restaurant Depot comes in very handy to get those types of things. So remember, you're scaling this up. You know, you're going from a place where you're making small batches to a place where you're going to make bigger batches. You need to have the containers and trays and pans if you're baking that will work in that type of system. So you want to take a look at that. I'll share with you a list of equipment that I put together for a client so you can see just how involved it will get. Storage requirements. What are you going to need in terms of walk-in refrigerator? How about walk-in freezer space? Typically, a commercial kitchen will give you, say, one rack of storage space in their freezer and refrigerator as part of your lease agreement. You can pay for more as you need it. And then you can also pay for warehouse space, which is just dry goods, where you can store in a common area that you can pull from as needed. But keep in mind, if you do that, you're also exposing yourself to all the other materials that are in that kitchen. Licensing requirements. This is where things get a little bit dicey when you get into commercial kitchens, because the MDH will license the kitchen. The MDA has to issue you a license to manufacture your food at that facility. So you guys are all familiar with the MDA licensing for cottage food, or the license for cottage food, I'm sorry. But once you get into a commercial kitchen, you take that next step up in regulatory oversight. And in that particular case, the commercial kitchen gets the license, so their kitchen is able to manufacture food products, and they keep that up. And then you get your own license and your own insurance to be able to manufacture your product in that kitchen. So you have to think about those. And again, the CFPM is something that you're going to need, and that's part of the licensing and requirements. And then finally, the hours you want to work. Now, most people, if they're going to move their business from cottage food into a commercial kitchen, want to work day hours, right? Maybe morning hours, 8 to noon, maybe noon to 5. Some people can get away with second shift, 4 to 11, and that opens up a lot more possibilities, because most commercial kitchens right now are fairly full during daytime hours because that's what everybody wants. If you can bring your product in and manufacture off hours, I actually have one client that's doing it overnights, so 11 to 7, and they have the whole place to themselves, so it's actually wonderful. Or even second shift 4 to 11, that opens up a whole lot of possibilities for commercial kitchen availability, and also your cost goes down a little bit because they have shift differential, so you're paying a little bit less for off shift. So you want to think about that, how many hours you're going to need to make your product, and those are all things that you can do as you develop your 5-year plan, putting out your volume. I'm assuming all of you either have a business plan or are working on one. If you don't, I would get to work on one, because that will also help plan your volume and when you're going to need to go into a commercial kitchen and beyond. And then cleaning and sanitation. Take a look at the commercial kitchen and make sure that they have solid cleaning and sanitation policies and procedures in place. You know, if you go into their bucket room, their mop room, utility room, does it look clean or does it look like a mess? Look on the kitchen floor. Is it nice and clean with a drain in the middle like the left-hand picture, or does it have product all over the place, uncovered, no doubt? So those are things you want to look at. Make sure that they have a good cleaning and sanitation program, because you're going to have a good cleaning and sanitation program for your product and process in that kitchen. Okay, so let's take a look at costs to get started in a commercial kitchen. I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, just how much does it cost to get going in a commercial kitchen? Well, I'm going to give you an example to kind of explain this. And as I go through this example, you're going to see a lot of stuff at the bottom of this slide. You probably won't be able to read it. That's okay. You're not supposed to. But just take a look at how many things you have to consider purchasing to be ready to go into a commercial kitchen. So I put this in a key of 3 things. Things that you need prior to startup, before you even start to make first product in your kitchen. Things you need prior to selling your product. That's actually a different list. And then things that are nice to have but not essential. So for this client, I put together this list. And if you take a quick look through it, you can see some things that you might even have at home that you can bring with you. But the point about this slide is to tell you that not all commercial kitchens have the things that you need. You're going to have to go out and get them yourself. Things that are probably not even on your mind right now are containers. You know, how are you going to store your product? Are you going to store work in progress product? What kind of containers are you going to use for that? What kind of containers are you going to use to store your finished goods? If they're already in a sealed container, if they're in their final packaging, storage requirements are a little bit easier, obviously, because you're not subject to the cross-contamination things. Raw materials, you know, how are you going to store those? What kind of containers are you going to use for that? What kind of containers are you going to use as you prepare your food? Because now you're talking about, you know, 50-pound batches of dough rather than 1-pound batches of dough. So you have to start thinking along those lines as well. So you kind of get an idea here on costs. I want to bring your attention over here to the far right column. And these are the personal protective equipment things: hairnets, beard covers, disposable gloves, aprons. Whether or not you use those in your home kitchen, when you get into a commercial kitchen, you have to use those. You have to wear hairnets. Even I have to wear a hairnet in a commercial kitchen, even though I don't even have that issue. Beard covers, aprons. Sometimes safety glasses are good. Masks these days, now that you're preparing food in the world of the post-pandemic. But look at personal protective equipment, and if you're not using it in your home kitchen, you might want to consider doing it, because not everybody wants to see a hair in their food. I certainly don't, and I've experienced that before with people that have gone into commercial kitchen and not understood how to protect their own person against the product, but also to protect the product against them. So maybe start to look at these things, and if you have them, start to compile them. If you don't, start to make up your own list of things that you're going to need if you transition to the commercial kitchen. So now let's take a look at how much all of those things cost. So from that example only, things you have to have, about $1,300. Things that you need prior to selling product, about $500. Nice things, another $500. I also put down recurring supplies. So this particular client was producing 4 days or 5 days a week at the commercial kitchen, 4 weeks out of the month. So they were there full time. And for them to restock their disposable supplies, beard covers, hair nets, aprons, parchment paper, foil, towels to clean, sanitizing agents, it was about $300 a month. So for that particular example, if I pull back and take a look at, from my experience, what I've seen for leasing, startup costs, and for recurring supplies, what I come up with is your lease is going to cost you anywhere from $500 to $2,000 a month, approximately. It's a pretty wide range, but it's based on how many days out of the week you want to produce. Your startup costs are going to be $2,000 to $4,000. You could possibly get away with less, but if you have to bring a unique piece of equipment in to manufacture your product, like say a unique cutting system because you have a specific shape to cut your dough or your granola bar, or a specific type of filling machine for your powder or your trail mix, you have to take all those in consideration. You could do it for less than $2,000, but in my particular example, it costs them almost $2,000 just to get what they need to manufacture their product on a regular basis. And that's why I put it there. Recurring supplies, $300 to $500. It's an estimate. It could be less. It's probably not more. So if I put all of that together, you're going to need about $800 to $2,500 a month of free cash flow to lease a commercial kitchen. And that's a good rule of thumb. If you're not generating at least $2,500 a month in free cash flow, and that means after all of your other costs, your raw material costs, your packaging material costs, your production costs, if you have any, those are all things that are not included in that number. So after you take all that out, if you're clearing $2,500 a month, then you're in good shape to rent or to lease a commercial kitchen. And just to emphasize the point, this is only for the commercial kitchen and the equipment that you're going to need to get started. Okay, so I hope that gives you a fairly good idea of what it's going to cost to go into a commercial kitchen, some of the reasons to do it, and some of the reasons not to do it. So let's take a look real quickly at some other choices. Contract manufacturing, food trucks, brick and mortar. Depending on what you're making, entrepreneurs have come to me saying, I've got this recipe I made at home. My friends and family love it. I've sold it to my neighbors. I want to go ahead and go to the next step. And they usually come up with contract manufacturing. This is typically their first option. The contract manufacturer is an option, but the control that you give up on your product at that early of a stage, to give up that control to the contract manufacturer, you lose a lot more than you gain. And also your outlay, your capital outlay, and your production costs are going to go way up. Now we're talking tens of thousands to get into a contract manufacturer versus thousands to get into a commercial kitchen. How about a food truck? A lot of people want to take that home recipe and start a food truck. That's a perfectly fine way to scale up if you want. But the capital outlay for a food truck and for all the licensing, believe me, it's not easy. Getting a license for a food truck, even in the state of Minnesota, is pretty darn difficult. And then finally, the dream, brick and mortar. I've had some clients that have approached me and said, I want to build my own manufacturing facility. I highly discourage that. I really do. It's a step way down the road, and that's really dependent on what you want to do with your business. Do you have a 5-year plan for your business? What do you want your business to be in 5 years? Are you trying to build up a legacy that you can pass down to your children, or are you trying to build up your business so fast that you can sell it, make a profit, and go on to your next idea? That really will help drive your decisions too in terms of brick and mortar. But this is not a conversation I would have if you're in the cottage industry. Okay. So with all that said, I hope you have a pretty good idea of what it would cost to go into a commercial kitchen, what a commercial kitchen looks like and how it works. What are the things that you're going to have to purchase to start working in a commercial kitchen? What things will press you into looking into commercial kitchens? What kind of volumes do you need first? What kind of food safety things do you need that you don't have right now? But I want to give you a final consideration on this thing before we open it up for questions. I told you it would be a long presentation. Final consideration is very simple. If and only if you have enough sales to support all of your monthly costs, plus the cost of a commercial kitchen, could you consider leasing a commercial kitchen for your next scale-up move? You need to be able to sell your product and show that you can sell your product consistently before you really want to even start to look at a commercial kitchen. Otherwise, you can expect to put down a lot of money to do all of your R&D, to do all of your scale-up, and you're basically making product that you're throwing away because you're learning how to make your product in the commercial kitchen, but you're not selling anything. So it's all sunk costs. And I would highly advise against doing that. Make sure you got the sales to do it. So that's the end of my presentation on commercial kitchens. I hope you have lots of questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor. I don't know if we've collected a list of them, or if you just, whoever wants to ask a question, feel free to unmute and ask, and I'll do my best to answer it.
There's one question in the chat, and it says, if you're upping the amount of product you are making to a manufacturing point, would you have to add some kind of preservative to your product, wouldn't you? Or?
Well, that's a yes and no question. Depends on your food. If you are selling a shelf-stable item and you're doing your shelf studies at home and you can do it without a preservative and it's stable for your 6 months claim or your 12 months claim, then no, you don't need a preservative. If you are making your product and selling it within a couple days of making it, then you might want to consider, the types of preservatives that you need to hold for the shelf life. If you're doing a frozen product, no, you don't need any preservatives, because freezing your product and keeping it frozen in the store shelf practically eliminates any microbiological issues. If it's a refrigerated product, again, that's why I'll take you back to that shelf life study that you do at home. I would seriously recommend that you start doing that, because you'll be able to tell yourself if you're going to need a preservative in it. Because if you're claiming a 6-month shelf life, but the product starts to taste bad after 3 months, then you're going to probably want to experiment with adding preservatives home first, see how that works out before you transfer into your commercial kitchen. But I don't know if I answered that question adequately. I hope I did.
Does that answer your question, Shelley?
Yes, well, he was showing the picture of the manufacturing plant, and I'm just thinking that's a lot of food being produced, and it takes time to produce it, package it, and deliver it to where it needs to go. Some things probably won't last that long.
No, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And that's why I really emphasize that shelf life study early on in the process, to understand what your shelf life of your product is going to be. Most shelf stable foods, you should be able to get a year out of it. Refrigerated foods, the target is usually 3 to 4 months. Frozen, 6 months, approximately. It depends on your product. But if you're not getting that at home while you're watching your product over the months, then yes, you need to start looking at preservatives.
So what I've heard you saying throughout this entire presentation is you really need to have a very good plan in place so that you don't put a lot of money and energy into something that negatively impacts you for years to come.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really the key to this whole thing is don't assume that you're going to sell your product. When you go to a commercial kitchen, Shelley, just to kind of touch on your question again, you're making smaller batches, or you're making larger batches that you do in your home kitchen, but you're not mass producing product. I mean, we're talking about if you can make 100 units of your product in a week at home, you might be able to get it up to 1,000 units. So, a 10-fold increase is probably not a bad way to look at it. But if you're already selling that 100 units a week and the demand is going up, then take that next logical step to the commercial kitchen, and you'll still be selling it as fast as you are currently. You'll just have more customers.
Here's a question. Are there scientific studies that describe shelf life in specific products that can be used as a guide for cottage food producers while they're doing their own shelf studies?
Oh, what a great question. What a great question. I wish I could answer that yes. And this is something that I've been working with other nonprofit groups. So, AURI will be on the line in a little bit, and I've been working closely with them on some projects. But there is no substitute for real-time shelf study with your own product, because your product is going to be different than something else that's on the shelf. I would suggest that for starters, before you have your real-time stability, if you find a product on the store shelf that's similar to yours, similar ingredient makeup, and you don't have any specific ingredients that could create a stability issue, you can start with that number. But just understand that from the FDA's standpoint, so when you get into the big scale, like when you're going to contract manufacturing and selling statewide and maybe even out of state, when you get to that point, and hopefully all of you will, you're going to need real-time shelf stability studies on your product to prove what you're claiming for your shelf life. that will be required documentation. So the answer to your question is you can use what's out there currently to set your initial shelf life, but you have to have your own data in real time to document it and prove it, so you can actually put that on a label. The short answer to your question is no. There are no scientific studies that you can go out and look at that will tell you what shelf life you can put on your product. It's individual for each formula, unfortunately.
I'm only smiling, giggling right now because I actually have cookies left over for Christmas on my counter, and I keep on thinking about throwing them away, but they've been there for so long now for my family, which is my husband or my dog that live here. And I should have really started back then and every week, because my husband just keeps eating them. And it does go back to what people, the taste and the quality and whether or not it's food safe still and so on and so forth. This has really made me think about that.
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Please. No, I was just going to wrap that one up and say that shelf life testing that you're doing at home right now will pay off dividends, huge dividends later on down the road.
Yep. So Amy just asked, what was the food safety log book mentioned? I can send that out if you want, or if you want to type in the link, but I actually have a link for it from Kurt from the other day. So if you have it easily ready.
If you could send it out, that'd be great, Jennifer.
Okay.
I don't have it readily available. Sorry.
Okay, not a problem. And Joy, this maybe was answered, but just to check, if I am renting from a commercial kitchen that is already inspected as a CFP, do I need another inspection solely for my business?
Good question, Joy. Thank you for asking it. You need a license from the MDA to sell your product. So the MDH will license the kitchen. You'll have your certified food protection manager license. So that's one of the requisites. The other requisite is you have to have a license from the MDA to actually manufacture and sell your food. So it's specific to your business. A license for the kitchen, license for you for your business. Does that help? Any other questions?
And going back to that question on that food hygiene bill, because I was talking with Kurt, was it Tuesday? Yeah, it was Tuesday that we talked last. I've actually ordered the book, and kind of like Shelley, and then we worked with the University of Minnesota, MDA, MDH, when they had the COVID preparedness plan, because cottage food producers were considered first line, and so we could stay open. But they had the COVID-19 preparedness plan for industry, which didn't apply most of it. So we rewrote something that applied better. I haven't talked to Shelley about this yet, but it was one of those things I was going to. I thought we should take a look at this, and we should create our own logbook that could be used readily for cottage foods, for sheets, and have those sheets available if we make them on our website and that type of thing.
Cool.
More work, Shelley. So I'll get that
Just
link to everybody, and then we are going to be working on that too.
Yeah, and I'll send you a copy of the presentation, Jennifer, so if anybody wants it, they can grab it. Just to back up, I don't know if anybody have heard my name before. I've been in a number of shows and things, did a lot of presentation on this, but I run a solo consulting business. I work with small and startup companies to help them make these transitions, to make the transition from commercial or from home kitchen to commercial kitchen, commercial to contract to brick and mortar. I've been a brand owner. I've launched my own products. I've been a contract manufacturer. So I've run my own facilities where we take on clients. So I've kind of seen it from both ends. I'm a chemical engineer by degree from the University of Minnesota. I've worked in the food industry for 35 years. And the thing that I guess I'm most recognizable for is I developed and launched apple cinnamon Cheerios back when I was in General Mills way back when. So I think that'll be on my tombstone. That's a little bit about me. I probably should have said it earlier, but this is the kind of stuff I do for a living. So I was really happy that Jennifer asked me to come on and talk about it, and I hope you got some useful information out of it. Any follow-ups? Any other questions before we wrap it up?
Here's a statement. I love the presentation, and especially the thought-provoking questions that really make you think through to move or not to move. And that really is, you know, having you follow up after Matt Rosen this morning and Matt saying, pick a couple of things, do it well. And then he went from cottage food to what he's doing now. And then having you talk about it, it's just really nice how they mesh together and really you reinforce each other. And both, thank you so much. And it's been great getting to know you. I think that I'm getting the better end of the stick. So
No, I think it's a even exchange. I'm learning quite a bit too. So anything y'all need, Jennifer has my contact information. Also on the presentation, if you go up to that upper left-hand corner and zoom in on it, it's got my email and website, so you can take a look at that. But thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for the questions. I hope it helped out a little bit, and good luck with the rest of the day.
Thank you very much for being with us, Kurt.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
bye.
All right, well, we actually finished a little bit early.
Yay, so we get an extra long lunch.
Yeah, unless anybody has any more questions or anything.
I just want to check one more thing. Does everybody know where to look for the cottage food law, where you would look online to find it? The law that governs us? If there's anybody who does not, if you want to just drop your email in the chat and we'll make sure we send you a link to it.
All right, so should we adjourn until 12:30?
Perfect.
Okay, sounds great. Have a nice lunch, everybody.
You too.